What's up, friends? Thanks for stopping by. Lincoln Lawyer here, coming to you from gray and not so sunny Fort Lauderdale. Happy D-Day. So today we got an interesting topic for you. We're going to talk about Grant Cardone's real estate funds. All right, this should be interesting. So first of all, I want to clarify that this is not a Grant Cardone exposed. It's not Grant Cardone scammer. It's not one of those videos. All right. I actually like and appreciate Grant. I like his videos. I like a lot of his material, especially the motivational stuff. I've watched a lot of his stuff over the years, and I've learned a lot also. So you know, it's not going to be a hit piece against Grant. I got nothing against Grant. Obviously, he's got a very strong personality that is off-putting to a lot of people. Maybe his arrogance potentially makes him unlikable to a lot of people. So that's fine, I can understand that. I don't have any problem with his personality. Basically, I would say that the part of his personality that I admire and respect the most may be actually the part of his personality that is the most off-putting to a lot of people. And that part would be his ruthlessness, okay? I need to make sure that to elaborate on this a little bit. He is a ruthless motherfucker, all right? So he's not gonna deny that, I'm sure. So you're not gonna find many hyper-successful people who are not ruthless. So this is something I can respect, I can understand, I can dig. So I have nothing against him based on that, but I assume a lot of people might. So that's fine. But basically, I'm just going to discuss his funds from the videos that I've seen him do on them, and I've seen third parties do on him and his funds, his business in general, and having drafted, reviewed a whole bunch of these offering documents, I pretty much know what's going to be in there. So if I don't know specifically what's in there, then I can pretty much assume it's going to be one of two or three choices that are available to Grant. So that's generally how it's going to work. I don't have the actual fund offering documents available. I haven't reviewed them. If you have them, if you want to send them to me, I'll look at them, do a video on them, perhaps, possibly, but I have not reviewed the actual offering docs. So with that, let's get into the meat of the video. Grant has a couple of real estate funds. They are based on Reg A and Reg D. All right, I've talked about this in other videos, and basically I'm not going to get into this too heavily right now. Reg A plus, has two tiers. Basically, it's a 20 million tier and a 50 million tier. Basically, I'm assuming he's using the 20 million tier because there's less regulations, less audits, less submissions, less oversight. But basically, Reg A is just a little bit below a public offering. It's vetted by the SEC. You know, audited financials you got to submit. So it's pretty strict. And as far as investors, pretty much anybody's allowed. In tier 1, tier 2 is more strict. There's more paperwork. Tier 2 is the 50 million tier. So it's stricter. I don't think he'll go with that. There's a lot of ongoing maintenance costs with that tier. So it's probably tier 1 up to 20 million bucks. And you can invest, you can accept any investor. They don't have to be accredited, basically. Okay? And there's no limits on investment. So that's it. Reg D, I've talked about also. It's an unlimited investment amount. They have to be accredited, the investors. There's only like one form basically you have to submit with the SEC, and there's forms you got to submit in every state where you have investors, that kind of thing. But obviously you got to check the investors must be accredited, that kind of thing. So it's very low bar with the Reg D. So he's using both of those. That's as far as I understand. So getting it out of the way, he can accept unaccredited investors into Reg A. So okay, case closed with that. You can't debate that. So that's perfectly legal, no problem with that. So how does he purchase property, and how do the investments work with the funds there? So basically, to my understanding, Grant is going to purchase the properties, whatever properties he's going with, he's going to purchase them with the bank using his own funds, all right? He uses his own funds with his own investment company, his own capital, buys the property, and then afterwards, he is going to cash himself out. He's going to sell part or all of his interest to the fund that holds the investor capital. Okay, so whether he cashes himself out fully or partially, I don't know. I have to assume that the lender would require him to keep some portion of equity within his personal investment company. So just standard commercial deal, probably 25 to 30% down, and he may sell maybe 20 million of that if it's a Reg A, or maybe half, maybe more than half, 75%, whatever the lender would agree to, he would sell that. I don't think he cashes himself out fully 100%. So, but I don't know for sure, okay? Grant very likely buys into the fund himself, all right? So that's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. So he buys interest in the fund, okay? So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. When we discuss the intricacies of distributions. So why does Grant sell out part or all of his equity in his properties? That's simple. Risk reduction. Okay, very simple. So the bank needs to get paid. Period. Bank wants its nuts. Economy sucks. Fuck you, pay me. You know, your occupancy rate sucks. Fuck you, pay me. You don't have the cash flow. Fuck you, pay me. Or you know, we take the property. That's it. So that's how it works. The bank you can't negotiate with. That's it. You got debt, you got a mortgage, they got a lien, and they want to be paid, period. Fund investors are controlled by the manager. They don't have to be paid. Grant controls that fund. He can suspend dividends. That's it. So if he can't pay, then there's other priorities where the money goes. Simple. So that's the risk. That's the issue right there. So Grant controls the fund. That's massive risk reduction for Grant. So that's what he's looking for. He's looking to control the cash flow. All right. Now the other thing that is important for Grant as far as the risk reduction situation is Grant's fees are probably guaranteed. All right. To my understanding, he's getting 5 to 6% management fee. He's getting 1 to 2% on the first trip. He's getting 1 to 2% management during the holding period, and 1 to 2% on the round trip. So about 5 to 6%. That's what I understand his management fee to be. Now, I haven't seen the documents, as I said before, but I'm assuming that his fees are going to be cumulative and guaranteed. What this means is that if any of his fees are missed due to any issues with cash flow or the property, then whenever cash flow materializes for that property, then those fees are going to be made up retroactively. That's what I think. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's probably 85% certainty on that. So whatever fees are missed, they're going to be made up first before the investors get paid. Now, furthermore, Grant's interest in the fund. All right, so he talks about this a lot. He's got a lot of employees. He's got staff. He's got, you know, key personnel from his organization, family members in his fund. And he's talking about always like he's distributing checks, monthly checks, yada, yada. Okay, so what he doesn't say is whether they hold the same interests as the investors, which I don't know if they do or not. I would have to assume not. All right, so I would have to assume that insiders, including Grant, hold super preferred shares, A+, whatever they're called, doesn't matter. But what this means is that they get paid before the regular investors. That's generally how it's done in a lot of corporations. I mean, preferred shares are going to get first dibs on any cash flow, okay, when it's available. So I'm not sure about that. I'm maybe 50-50 on the investment side. The management fee, I'm almost sure that those are cumulative and guaranteed from the fund. The investor payments for Grant's interest and insider interest, I'm not positive, I'm not sure about it. Could be 50-50. But I would have to assume that they have special interest above that which the regular investors get. So that is definitely a form of safety there. Investors are last. So the way it works is basically you got the operating costs of the property. That's number one. That's essential. Whatever. Okay? Whatever they are, they have to be paid. Period. The bank has to be paid. Period. There's no choice. Number 3 is going to be Grant's management fee. Number 4 probably is going to be super ultra preferred A+ super duper shares of Grant and the other insiders, his key employees, family, etc. And then the investors get paid last. That's just, you know, that's perfectly legal. There's nothing illegal, nothing unethical about it. That's generally how funds work. That's why I'm not a fan of funds in general, because they totally control the distributions. Unless you're an insider, then you get, you know, the preference there with distributions. But personally, I'm not a fan of any of these funds. Okay, so this is the reason why I would not likely do business with Grant per se. Okay, not that he's knocking on my door, but I would probably not invest in these funds personally. Okay, because you totally lose control there of your funds. All right. So I'm going to talk about the principal later, all right? But I'm just talking about dividends right now, okay? Number of criticisms I've heard about Grant's funds, Grant's business methods, strategies, which I'm going to address relatively quickly right now. So one, does Grant overpay for the properties? Okay, I've heard these statements that, okay, Grant, well, pays too much for the properties, but I'm going to totally disagree with that, because there's no such thing. It's not something that you can really judge a fund by, okay? So you need to understand that Grant is bidding against other buyers, okay? There's no set price for a property. You can have an appraisal, but that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean it's a set price. So he's got to outbid competitive buyers, okay, to get that property. So by definition, he has to overpay. That's just how it works. That's a fact of life, okay? So it's unfortunate, but he's got to pay more. The price of a property is going to go off of the cash flow of the property and unrealized projected cash flow, which I'm assuming when he does diligence, he will have plans how to maximize, how to increase cash flow of a property. He's a very astute investor. He knows what he's doing. So there's a lot of ways to increase cash flow. You can raise rents, you can make additions, you can split rooms, you can whatever. There's all kinds of stuff. You can split off the property, build a pool, replace appliances, whatever. It doesn't matter. So he knows what he's doing, and he's going to increase the cash flow of the property. That's what he's planning on, okay? So that's not really a fair criticism if he overpays for a property, which there's no really such thing as overpaying. He pays a market price. That's what he sets, the market price when he buys it. So that's it. So he may pay more than the prior buyer, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, those things, there's no really market value for them except for whatever the buyer pays. Okay, so let's address that. Next thing is going to be his loan types. Okay, I've heard a criticism that Grant takes out interest-only loans. Now, I don't know if he does interest-only loans for all his properties or only some of them, but interest-only loans are a problem. I'm not a big fan of interest-only loans in general. Why? Because, for obvious reasons, okay? So interest-only loans are short-term loans, generally 5 to 10 years. At the end of the loan, you're going to have an arm. You're going to have a jump in payments, massive jump. So you're going to have to start paying principal. Interest-only, you're paying for 5 to 10 years, and then principal you got to start paying. And then the interest also goes up, so you got big jumps. So nobody wants to pay that, so you're going to have to either sell or refi that property, okay? So he says he doesn't time the market, but by taking out interest-only loans, you are in fact timing the market. You're trying to time the market. So he might have some wiggle room as far as a couple of years there. I don't know the terms of the loan specifically. I don't think he discloses those. He probably has total control over the loan type, or whatever liens he has on he grants on the property. He probably has total control over those. So basically, interest loans, there's no equity on a sale of property. There's no capital gains. You can't have capital gains. But interest-only loans will maximize cash flow. So because they're a lower interest rate, so they're going to maximize cash flow by definition. And that's what he's looking for, I'm assuming. And then he plans on probably, I'm assuming, as a very astute investor, this is how most of big money is made in real estate. He's going to buy a property, he's going to improve it, add value, he's going to refinance it for a higher appraisal value, take out maximum amount, 75%, 80%, whatever he can get, and then he's going to pocket that difference. So that's how he makes massive boku bucks on that, okay? So that's how it's done. Plus, obviously he gets the dividend income, and there's a lot of stuff a lot of benefits. So he gets the management fees, dividend income, yada yada. This is how serious money is made in real estate, okay? So that refinancing the loan, and that's tax-free money right there once you get that second refinance. So going off that, if the property depreciates, all right, after a calamity like, for example, the COVID situation we had right now, property depreciates, lower valuations, occupancy lower, the price drops, you still got to refinance. You got to sell or you got to refinance. I mean, there's no choice. What are you going to do? So, sell at a loss. Potentially, the principal is at stake there, because you sell at a loss, there's a deficiency there. I mean, you got to pay the deficiency. So that is going to come out of Grant's pocket and potentially the investors. I don't know how the fund is structured, but it is very possible that the investors may also be responsible for any loss in the principal in case the property does not sell for the original sale price. I mean, there's You know, who's going to pay for that? It's going to be proportional to the percentage of interest of the owners. So everybody's going to be responsible for that loss. So there is a potential, it appears, that investors may lose part or all of their principal and not get any of it back. All right, that's how it is, fact of life. All right, so that's a risk. If he tries to refinance, he may not get a loan because it's going to be appraised at a lower value because of the reduced market value of a property, reduced cash flow, reduced occupancy. Maybe the property gets dilapidated, gets damaged, whatever. You pay less for a substandard management company and they manage it into the ground. I mean, shit happens, you know. Maybe they start admitting subpar tenants who destroy the property. Value drops, deteriorates. There's no money for upkeep. All right, so this is operating expenses. They go down. So he's going to cut costs, cut the operating expenses. Property can dilapidate. The appraised value drops. You can't refinance. Why would you refinance for a lower valuation? That makes no sense. So you got to sell it pretty much. Or he's going to have to take out another loan on the deficiency. That's another option. So he's going to have two mortgages, all right, on that gap between the refi amount and there's a gap in the valuation. He may be able to get additional financing at a higher interest rate, and so then you can forget about dividends at that point. I mean, I'm going to get to that at the end, which I'm pretty close to. But anyway, so if there's additional liens, additional interest than what you bought the property with, forget about distributions. All right, just letting you know. All right, so Grant's talked about his properties, a lot of evictions, defaults, lease defaults going on. Big issue, all right, could be up to 30% in some properties. So he's talked about making an offer to his tenants for one or more of his properties, maybe all of them, to prepay the lease rent, prepaid for the rest of the year. He's giving them like a 50% discount, I believe is what he mentioned, which is an unbelievable offer. I mean, I would jump at that offer in a second. I would love an offer like that. Seriously, not even joking. Fantastic offer, very creative, amazing. So, but that will drop cash flow extremely substantially, very substantially, and that will lower the appraised value of the property. All right, so as far as distributions, I wouldn't expect any for the rest of the year at all. Next year, I don't know, probably part of the year, I don't know. I don't even think next year they're going to make any distributions. I doubt it. Possibly, but I doubt it. I wouldn't be surprised if they make no more distributions until the interest loan, the interest-only loan, ends, the term for that interest-only ends, and it turns into the ARM. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's 2-3 years of no distributions. So just be ready for that. I mean, Grant controls the funds. You can't pull your money out until he allows it. That's the commitment. That's a fact. So it's going to be, that's it. It's sealed. Your money's sealed. There's a serious threat to the principal also, not just distributions. All right. Now, as I mentioned before, is Grant and his key insiders, family, etc., taking distributions? Potentially, it could happen, possibly. If there's enough cash flow, then they may be taking at least part or all of their distributions. So you need to understand that. He doesn't have to disclose that. He doesn't have to tell you. But, I mean, if he's not getting his management fee first, then definitely no distributions. But if there's enough cash flow for his management fee, his annual 1% holding fee, 1 or 2%, then he's getting that. If there's any overage, then it's probably going to distributions for the key employees. But investors, not getting anything. So, in conclusion, I'm going to end it pretty much here. As I said, as far as distributions, don't expect any for a while. Definitely for a while, at least until the market recovers for these apartments. It could never recover, potentially, because there's been so much building and may be overbuilt. People may not want to pay, $1,200, $1,500, $1,800 for an apartment. They may want to pay $1,000, $900. So rents may need to be lowered. If other properties start dropping rents, people are going to start moving there. And so Grant might be forced to drop rents in his own properties. That's just how it works. That's, then cash flow drops. The market value of the property is going to drop, and if cash flow drops, the operating expenses got to be serviced, the bank has got to be serviced, and Grant's management fees got to be serviced first. So as far as dividends, it went from a low risk proposition to a high risk situation right now, okay, because of this calamity, the catastrophe. Okay, so but if you had a lawyer, then you would have known the risk. But if you didn't get a lawyer, if you just kind of glanced over the offering documents, then you wouldn't know dick at how the fund works. Which I'm not saying I know exactly how the fund works, but I'm pretty much telling you that it's more likely than not, I'm telling you that's how it works. Okay, so Grant is more than likely still pulling some kind of money out of these properties, even with the reduced occupancy rates. But investors are not going to get paid for a substantial period of time. As I said, if it comes between Grant's dollar and your dollar, Grant is ruthless. Grant's dollar is going to win. That's just how it works. You need to understand that. Grant is a ruthless motherfucker. So those are the risks of doing business with Grant, all right? And, you know, that's about it. So I'm going to finish it off right here. And, you know, good luck to you. Peace.